everybody, welcome to the trek. I'm Molly.
And I'm Danny. Back in 2020, we thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail, and in 2022, we then hiked the Pacific Crest Trail.
Today, we are here to talk to you about the biggest differences between the AT and the PCT.
So we're going to break this down into 5 different categories, and we'll timestamp them down below for your convenience.
In this first video, we're going to dive into the gear and the logistics, and then in the next video, we'll get into the other topics. So let's dive into gear. One of the biggest differences in gear right off the bat is going to be what you need for the weather. So on the AT, it's going to rain about a third of the days that you're on trail. So a rain cover, a rain jacket, and a pack liner are super important. Where on the PCT, it doesn't rain as much, you might not need that, but you do have to worry about the sun. So a sun hoodie and umbrella are really important.
The next item we're going to be talking about is a bear canister. On the Appalachian Trail, there's only 5 miles on the entire trail that requires it. So as long as you can hike those 5 miles, we don't recommend getting one for that trail. However, on the Pacific Crest Trail, you do need it through the entire Sierra section, as well as Lasta National Park, and we recommend you renting from Kennedy Meadows.
The next type of gear that we're going to talk about is the gear that you need for the snow on the PCT. So on the PCT, you need ice axe and micro spikes, and these will save your life. They're super important. You can't do the trail without them. But on the AT, unless you're starting in December, you're not going to need these. On the AT, people love to hammock camp. There are trees everywhere and it's super easy. And it's not that you can't do it on the PCT, but it's a lot more difficult, and so most people opt for a tent instead.
The next gear item is a GPS system. We recommend if you're a solo hiker that you should probably have them on both trails. However, on the Appalachian Trail, there are probably not many spots where you're going to need it, and on the Pacific Crest Trail, there are plenty of spots where you won't have service. So definitely for the PCT, we recommend having a Garmin inReach.
The last thing we want to touch on with gear is just how to take care of your gear between these 2 trails. On the AT, since it's wet all the time, you're constantly trying to dry things out and trying to prevent them from getting moldy.
And on the other side, the PCT is so dry, you don't know how many holes we have in our gear. So you really got to make sure to keep that gear nice and away from dust and dirt and sand. So next up, let's talk about logistics. When it comes to both trails, there's so much to consider. Let's start with the length of each stretch.
So on the AT, most of the time, your mileage between towns is going to be between 30 to 50 miles.
And then on the opposite end, on the PCT, it can be anywhere from 80 to 100. I know our longest stretch was 8 or 9 days.
Yeah, where on the AT, the longest we had was maybe 5.
So next up is towns. Along the Appalachian Trail, there are many moments where you're just walking right through downtown. It's really easily accessible from trail, and you can always find hitches.
Where on the PCT, a lot of times you have to take a side trail just to get to a trailhead to try and get a hitch. Yeah, so it gets a lot more difficult, and a lot of times the towns are farther away where you might try and be hitching 30 minutes to a town. An example of this is Kearsarge Pass, which is when you first enter into the Sierras. It's a 12-mile side trail. Yeah. So that's almost an extra day added onto your stretch that you have to take into account.
But it's really beautiful and worth it.
Yes. The next thing to consider is water. So on the PCT, you're easily doing 20 miles in between each water source.
But on the AT, pretty much the entire trail is a river, unless you're in the mid-Atlantic in the summer, but there's tons of trail angels that help out with that. Next up is MAILDROPS. So because both trails have such a big infrastructure now, you'll never really need to send yourself a mail drop for resupply. However, because the PCT has so many added gear pieces, you might need to ship maybe your ice axe or a micro spike to somewhere in the Sierras or Northern California.
One key moment I want to touch on is just on the PCT, it's important to send your micro spikes to Paradise Valley Cafe in that first 100 to 200 miles of trail, because you don't want to go over the San Jacintos without them. Something that can become a logistical nightmare, especially on the PCT, is when you're dealing with wildfires and the snowpack in the Sierras. So those are things you do have to consider. There's almost always a closure on the PCT because of wildfires that you're going to have to shuttle around, and you have to time when you enter the Sierras for the snowpack. The AT, you can just kind of walk through the whole thing.
We hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of the differences between the AT and PCT. Make sure to stick around as we cover the last 3 topics in the next video.
If you have anything you'd like to add or any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching.
See you guys next time.